In this episode, the sports managing editor of the Daily Athenaeum Bryce Cohen and myself, U92 sports director Quinn Robie, we sat down with Vice President and Director of Athletics of West Virginia University, Wren Baker, to talk about all things WVU Athletics, from revenue sharing to the renaming of the Hope Coliseum and even balling in Woodburn Circle, that event that's coming up here shortly. We want to thank the WVU Athletics for letting us to sit down and discuss all things WVU sports. So we hope you enjoy this episode of the Mountaineer Sports Insider.
Welcome into the Mountaineer Sports Insider podcast, a WVU student media podcast collaboration effort between the Daily Athenaeum and U92 The Moose. I'm Bryce Cohen, the Daily Athenaeum sports managing editor. Alongside me is Quinn Robie, the U92 sports director, and we have a very special guest today, none other than West Virginia University Director of Athletics and Vice President Wren Baker. Wren, how are you doing today?
Man, doing great, and it's been a while since we sat down together, but excited to have a chance to visit with you all.
It's an absolute pleasure to be here at the Hope Coliseum with you in your office, and let's just get right into our first question. So the university just announced a major scholarship expansion from 260 to 400 across the 18 Division I sports here. What was the driving factor behind the decision, and how do you see it impacting WVU's competitiveness?
Yeah, it really was, how can we best lift all of our sports to a position where they can compete in this new world. And so the House settlement established roster limits, but it removed the previous scholarship limits. And some people had added scholarships last year, and we weren't in a position to do that. But as we kind of pulled together our package to be able to rev share, but I knew that long term for us to remain highly competitive in a lot of sports where we've already established ourselves, baseball, men and women's soccer, or sports where we're trying to grow our success, like rowing and stuff like that. It was just going to be really critical for us to be able to offer those scholarships. And so we've been working on that for over a year, and ultimately we're able to add that, and it should position our Olympic sports programs. I mean, it'll help football as well because they'll be able to use that to build depth. But the biggest winners are our Olympic sports programs.
So you mentioned revenue sharing. So how is WVU preparing for that shift towards revenue sharing and how new athlete compensation models that could, redefine how the departments operate?
Yeah, the first step of that was just to make sure that we could go out and carve that money out of our budget or grow our revenues in a way that would allow us to allocate it, and we were able to accomplish that. The next thing is, once you got that full rev share, how are you going to divide it up and share it? And what we ended up doing is saying, hey, the best, most non-discriminatory way we can do that is the settlement identifies the revenue buckets that we're sharing when they pull that 22% from certain buckets around the country. And so we looked at what are each of these sports contributing into those revenue streams here at WVU, and we are sharing out a corresponding percentage of those. And so we felt like that was a very fair way for us to do that. Then the next piece is of each sports allocation, how are they using that to maximize their success level? And and that's a little bit trial and error. It's a little bit studying what the pro sports do. But if you have a salary cap, so to speak, and student athletes aren't employees, but it's the same concept. How much do you allocate? Let's use football for instance, per position, and then within that position, what are you allocating for each player in that position? And so there's a lot of math and a lot of strategy that goes into it, and then a lot of evaluation along the way to make sure, like, hey, that worked, that didn't work, here's how we're going to do that in the future. And so we spend a lot of time around here studying capology, so to speak, and trying to figure that out. But I think we're making a lot of progress.
So through the 2025 fall sports season so far, how would you evaluate the progress of a lot of these teams? You have the men's and women's soccer teams both cracking the top 25, volleyball team with a historic program record start, and obviously the football team was able to notch a backyard brawl victory. How do you evaluate the progress and the performance of the team so far?
Yeah, I think the health of our department overall is really good. We're competing across the board in a lot of sports, and that's evidenced by, you look last year at our Directors' Cup rankings, and those were very high. We were tops in the Big 12 through the fall and the winter. When we got to our spring sports, because we don't sponsor as many spring sports as a lot of other programs, just given our geographic area, especially relative to our Big 12 peers. But we still finished, I believe, 5th out of the 16 Big 12 teams in terms of the Directors' Cup, and so we were really, really pleased with that. We've got a new coach in men's basketball. We're excited about what Coach Hodge is doing. Coach Greeny's in her second year. She's made a lot of progress. And then, of course, our soccer programs are doing a great job. Coach Sabins has done a great job with baseball. Our track and field, what Sean Cleary's been able to do with, some challenges just that are inherent with our geography is really, really unique and special. John Hammond continues to do a great job with our rifle program. So we have a lot to be proud of and a lot to be excited about. Football with 80 new players and you hire a coach now and they miss the high school recruiting cycle for the most part. They are behind on the portal cycle, although the portal being pushed back, the window being pushed back in future years, that'll help. But you look across the country at first-year head coaches in this new environment, and generally that first season is a struggle just because of the nature of the transient nature of rosters and trying to replace that many. But I think Coach Rodriguez and his staff has done a really good job of pulling some pieces together. And then, it's our job to make sure we retain the student athletes that are priority, and then add to that. And so we're really excited about the future and feel really good about it. Our fan support has been tremendous. Our number of donors is very, very high. It's up. Our number of annual fund contributions is high. Our season tickets are the highest they've been since 2013. So there's a lot of indicators that are really favorable for us, and I think we've laid a foundation to be competitive as we move into the future.
So walk us through your process of hiring a coach. Obviously, you've probably had a little bit of a different tenure than most ADs at this level their first couple of years, but it seems like every single hire is hitting. What do you do? What's that process like?
Well, I think the first thing is I'm very thorough and spend a lot of time. Love data, look at a lot of different cuts of data and analytics. I keep a spreadsheet myself on all the potential head coaching vacancies we could have, and really am fairly methodical about tracking the people through that data. But you can only gather what you can off of paper. You got to sit with people and try and make sure that you feel like it's a fit. And certainly, I think no one bats 1,000 in coaching hires. I tell people all the time, if I could guarantee that everyone would be a smashing success, I would just go around charging people lots and lots of money to hire coaches for them. So you just try and do the best job you can of being very thorough and exhaustive in your process, and ultimately hiring the person that you see as best fit and giving it. And I go back to, I think, successful industries of any kind, not just college athletics, it really comes down to three basic principles: people, tools, and process. Do you have the right people? Have you equipped them with the right tools? Are they following the right process? And so as you go through a coaching search, those are the things that you're trying to assess and line up.
So when you watch a WVU athletics event, I've always been curious about what your experience is like. Do you watch for what the fans are doing? Do you pay attention to the actual result in the field? Are you like, hey, we kind of need more popcorn machines around the building? What is that experience like for you?
Yeah, all of the above. I'll tell you what's probably the hardest for me is I try to be very stoic and unemotional for the most part, because I know that the job that I have is one that's very visible, and especially when when it's a tough outcome or things aren't going well, I think people watch your body language and read into it too much sometimes, and so. I think that's I work really, really hard to take it in, to be observant. I'll take a lot of pictures during games, at our games and on the road, of things I like, things I don't like, things that I think we got to get better at. But for the most part, I'm watching the game, watching the result, watching the players, watching the players' interactions with our coaches, seeing how our coaches handle adversity, seeing how they teach through adversity, that's probably, if I had to use one word, I would just say I'm observing everything around me. So I'd say observant, but I really do work hard to not reflect emotion, even though inside I'm riding the same roller coaster of emotions that every fan in the stands is. I just try to make sure that I'm handling it a little differently, and I don't yell at refs much. If I do, I feel like it was a particularly egregious call, and I'm very cautious, very careful, but trying to observe everything around me.
So, when you're evaluating head coaches, what qualities or philosophies are non-negotiables for you?
Yeah, I think integrity, first of all. I want somebody who what they say you can trust, and that they're going to not embarrass the university with their personal behavior and actions. Ultimately, the athletic program is not the most important thing we do at the institution. This institution has research going on right now to save lives. You just go over to RNI and look at the work that they do at the Neuroscience Center. But we are the most visible thing. We're a window into WVU. And in this state, that means you're a window into West Virginia. And so you're wanting to reflect the kind of qualities that you want our state and our university to be known for. And so I think that's the first thing you're trying to make sure is that integrity is a piece that's there. I think the other thing that you're looking for is somebody who is adaptable to the times, especially in this environment. College athletics and the roles of athletic administrators and coaches has changed so much over the last 5 to 10 years. You have to have somebody who's willing to adapt with changing times and the changing landscape. You're also looking for somebody who can demonstrate they're competent in the schematics of sports, and always have to make sure you have somebody who's going to try and develop people away from the game. You're going to try and help people be better students, but also be better people. And so those are some of the primary things that we're looking for. I think the last thing for this job in particular is you got to make sure it's somebody who can handle being in the spotlight, because in this state, our head coaches are very visible people, particularly in our revenue sports. And so when we hire somebody, especially if it's football, men's basketball, but also, baseball, women's basketball, but if we hire a football or men's basketball coach, that very day they're one of the 5 most recognizable people in an entire state. And so not everybody can handle that. And I will tell you, when I come in as the athletic director, it was an adjustment for me to go from being the AD at North Texas, which is in DFW with a sea of fans of other pro and college sports teams, and living in virtual anonymity, to living a life where there is no anonymity inside the border of this state. And so that was a little bit unnerving at first, and so I spent a lot of time talking through that with people to make sure they really understand that you're kind of on call with this job 24/7, 365 unless you leave the state, and so you have to have somebody that understands that and can embrace it.
You've spoken a lot about how athletics here are kind of like the front porch, or like the main point that people see when it comes to our state. How awesome and important is it that we have a former WVU athlete in Pat McAfee kind of advertise the university as much as he does on not only his ESPN show, but just his social media in general?
Yeah, it's incredible. I tell him that all the time. I try to make sure that Pat knows that I recognize and appreciate the value, the earned media that we get because he's so dang proud of his alma mater. And, I don't ever want him to think that we take that for granted. His platform is one of the biggest platforms in the world, and certainly in sports. And it's a massive platform with the age demographic that universities target, young teenage males and females. Like I always thought it was his fan base was mainly young teenage males, and then as I get my daughters a little older and they're teenagers, I realized that they are very much aware of who he is and are a fan as well. And so, the pride that he has for WVU and the experiences he had here. And the pride he takes in understanding the heart and determination and grit and characteristics of West Virginians, I think is really, really valuable to us. And I'm grateful and appreciative that he's an unabashed, unapologetic homer for his alma mater.
So you've mentioned previously how revenue sharing is going to be, it's the new in college athletics. Recently, just signed a deal with Hope Gas, renaming the Coliseum as the Hope Coliseum. What went into that deal, and are there other facilities that could possibly be named too?
So the Hope conversation really started over a year ago, and there was a lot that went into it. One, if we were going to marry our brand with someone else's brand, there's a lot of equity in that WVU brand and in Mountaineer Athletics. And so we wanted to make sure it was a company that stood for the same kind of things that we stand for. And Hope Gas has shown that they do, and that they care about growing the economy, growing good jobs, growing West Virginia, and that's a focus of ours and something that's very important. Morgan O'Brien, their CEO, I've told him this before. Everywhere I go, I went to a Boy Scouts fundraiser in Parkersburg. My daughter's a type 1 diabetic. I go to a T1D fundraiser. Go in southern West Virginia to fundraisers, and Hope Gas signs are almost always there. And so I think that was important that it was somebody who we felt like really cared about WVU. Then the next thing is if you're gonna sell the names to an asset like the Coliseum that's iconic and means so much to alumni and donors and fans and just West Virginians in general, you want to make sure that you're getting market rate for it. So we spent a lot of time studying what is the market for this, what have other pro and sport and college franchises got for similar naming rights. And then the last piece of that was just the activation. How are we going to activate this? You see, we've got a new marquee being installed out there. There's going to be new signage on the Coliseum, and so it really was the activation side. What does Hope need to make this deal worth it? What are we willing to kind of co-brand and do together? And so it takes some time to get through that. I think. We would definitely be open to other naming rights of other facilities. We've done it in the case of baseball, for instance. So Rick Wagner gave a gift that was substantial, and we named the field. He's a great supporter, and then Ken Kendrick and his family come behind and give a big gift, and we named the stadium. I think we got to continue to look at ways to grow that revenue because that expense line grows every year, and it's important that we keep up with it. And I've said this before. You're trying to push and grow revenue everywhere you can because in college athletics it takes a lot to compete. You don't want to put an unnecessary burden on the fans in terms of ticket costs. You don't want to put too much of a burden on the students because they have a lot of expense with just their education. And so you're trying to grow as many revenue streams as you can to relieve pressure so that all of your constituents are taking part in providing the revenue that you need, but no one's share is unnecessary or too burdensome.
Yeah, so you mentioned Coach Hodge, and up until this point, you've had pretty much everything with him up until actual game action. What have you made of his recruiting process so far and the way he's come in and sort of built the culture?
Yeah, I think Coach Hodge, for a young coach, is super comfortable with who he is. And that sounds simple, but I've seen so many coaches who are still trying to figure out who they are and trying to balance that in a way. You know, it's hard. Go back to, I was a coach, head basketball coach at NAI school at 27. And I had worked for Eddie Sutton, who was a Hall of Fame basketball coach, as a GA. And I was having success as a coach, but I was kind of miserable. And I felt like I was almost like an actor playing a role, because I was trying to be Coach Sutton instead of trying to be me. And I remember I talked to a mentor of mine named James Dickey, and he I was telling him, Coach, I'm just not very happy, not very fulfilled. I thought this is what I wanted. So he said, well, walk me through what a day looks like and what a week looks like. And we got done, and he said, hey, sounds like you're doing everything that Coach Sutton did. And I was like, I am. I wrote notes every single day. I know what he did on every day of practice. And he said, have you stopped to think that you're not Eddie Sutton? And little thing to say, but it really helped. That's probably the biggest growth I ever had, was pursuing that conversation as a leader, because I realized, man, I can't do this being somebody else. I have to be authentic to who I am. And so back to Coach Hodge, for a young coach, I think he has a great grasp on who he is, and he leads with authenticity, and the people around him appreciate that and value that. And I think he's just done a really good job as a young coach. He's done a good job coming in here and showing people that. I think very quickly people have really started to gravitate towards him. And I think his players enjoy playing for him because of that. And ultimately, that's where recruiting comes into play. If people are playing for you and having a great experience, then they're going to tell that word's going to get around to their high school coaches, AAU coaches, the advisors they have around them, and it's going to help you continue to recruit well in the future.
So how do you balance the resources and the attention between the flagship programs like football and basketball, but then you also have your Olympic sports, both soccers are ranked, your rifle team here is top in the country. How do you balance kind of those resources through all the programs?
It's tough, and it's a managing challenge every day. So I was so happy about being able to add these scholarships, because it gives a boost to all of those programs where you might not be able to just throw a lot of cash their way immediately. And so, it's tough, because I think in our state, people care about those programs. Like, you guys may or may not be aware, but there was a time where they evaluated and was heading towards eliminating the rifle team, and the state really got upset about it. And ultimately, there was an appropriation that was put in the budget to bring rifle back. And so, that is, we do our caravans in the summer. Football, men and women's basketball go to every caravan. We rotate the other coaches amongst the caravans, and I'm always I always chuckle, because like I'll get asked about where's Coach Hammond, like you didn't bring him this time. And so people care about those things. They care about our baseball program. They care about men and women's soccer. And so, but the reality is it's hard to have a sustainable, healthy athletic program without football and basketball doing what they need to do. And so you have to make sure you're allocating resources to them. And when you look at our budget, which over the last decade has been kind of in the bottom half of the league, it puts a lot of pressure. And as I tell coaches, when your budget is down in the bottom half, anywhere where you just pay in the middle, if you're just average, that's several other things that you have to pay below average. Like it's all these levers are connected. There's only one pie, and how you divide it up is how you divide it up. And so, I think as we look at what the board has said, and what our goal is to elevate our budget, it'll really help those Olympic sports. But in the meantime, we're trying to give them as much as we can to allow them to compete without diluting what football and men's basketball needs.
All right, and the last one here for you, Wren. Since you joined WVU and you came on as the athletic director, what has been your favorite change made? Is there anything specific that you've really been happy to see implemented?
I think, we've made some various changes. I think the biggest thing that I'm probably the most proud of isn't necessarily a change, but it's the reaffirmation of our commitment to be excellent in all sports. I think a lot of people are informally, or in some cases formally, tiering their sports in this new world. And we've said, hey, we believe that we can be competitive across the board, and we're going to roll out a plan and a mission to do just that. And I think we've been able to do that. We've kept people engaged. There's been a lot of ups and downs, but I think our fan base has stayed passionate and enthusiastic. And I think we've continued to engage people all across this entire state and this entire landscape, and that's exciting stuff.
Well,
I got one more.
Oh, we got one more from Quinn.
For the hooping at Woodburn, what went into that? That's new. That I don't think that's ever been done here. So what went into that? Obviously, with homecoming, there's the parade, and then you're going to go straight to Woodburn. What went into that? Was that a coach's idea, or how did that happen?
So I have felt like the last couple of years our preseason basketball event has been stale. When I first got here, it was split up. Women did theirs separate from men. And then we kind of brought those together. But it just hasn't really had a lot of excitement and enthusiasm around it. And so I actually I think I'm probably the first one that mentioned it as an idea, but it was I wanted to do it on High Street. And so we were going to do hoops on High Street. But finding a location to put the court was really difficult there, and it was going to cost a ton of money because there's such a grade down High Street that we were going to have to actually build up like a platform to even put the court on to have an even space to do it. And so the cost was getting really exorbitant. And so I was kind of down. We had a couple conversations in our meeting with Erin Gibson and her team over in marketing and our senior leadership team. And I think they come back and said, "What about doing it at Woodburn?" And they said we could do team intros and with pyro around the entrance to Woodburn, and so like they have a bunch of neat plans. But it kind of started with me wanting to do it when I was in Texas. Right after I left, they started doing their basketball event on the town square. Now in Texas, everything's pretty well flat, and so that's pretty easy for them to do. But I saw pictures, and it looked like it was a smashing success. So I come back not thinking about the topography here in West Virginia, saying, "Hey, let's do this on High Street." That ultimately didn't work, but I think where we landed on this is going to be a really cool environment, and hopefully we get cooperative weather, and it's a tradition that we'll be able to continue.
Yeah.
Well, that'll do it for this special edition of the Mountaineer Sports Insider Podcast. Thank you from myself, Bryce Cohen, alongside Quinn Robie, and our special guest today, Wren Baker. It was a pleasure to speak with you.
Always enjoy it, and thank you guys.